So I want to get started with a question that came in the night. Someone said, "How can I help my husband cope with my child's ASD? My husband often refers to our son as it. This is very depressing. Like for Dr. Doreen and your advice on how I can get him to feel different about my child, and thank you."
Yeah, I can imagine that it's would be very difficult. It's hard, I guess, enough as it is just ourselves dealing with all the issues surrounding the treatment of our kids, and then to kind of have to have additional issues like this on top of it. It's very, very stressful. But I would, I think I would suggest that I don't know that it's right to think of it as how do I change my husband in order to meet the needs here of whether it's myself or my child or whatever. I think it's about finding out how your husband feels. I think it has more to do with what is he going through, because it sounds like he might be struggling himself with a lot of issues, and I would probably maybe make some space in the family for him. I don't know, and we've had the pleasure of talking to a lot of dads who've educated us over the years, as you know, Shannon, some of our favorite people, and it's a different experience for dads than it is for moms. And one of the things that we've heard often from dads is that they have a very hard time not receiving any kind of attention in the family. A couple of days ago, I was watching something, and there was a scene in this documentary where someone said, um, sometimes in a relationship or in a family, you are a flower, and sometimes you're a gardener.
Mm.
And I loved that. It just stuck with me. And I think that sometimes in life, we're not ready to be the gardener, and we still need to be the flower. And maybe that's part of it. It's a struggle for so many of us when we have kids, our whole life changes, and then to have a special needs child. That might be part of it. And I know that with dads, it also has to do with kind of self-image and just everything that they hoped for and prayed for. Now they're afraid that they may have lost it, or they might have embarrassment. I mean, there's so many different aspects to what we go through in our own lives. So really, I don't know your family dynamic, but I would recommend, if there's any possibility of making space for dad to express his own emotions and how he feels, that might be the beginning of how you engage in solving this situation.
I love that response because it's very inclusive of everybody, which is very indicative of you. And you're right. We've talked to a lot of different dads about this, and they express a lot of different opinions. But one of the biggest things that I've seen from dads is that dads a lot of times are used to the role of I'm the person who keeps, as you said, the gardener. I'm the person who keeps the roof overhead. I'm the doer. Whether that's true or not in their relationship, it's how they feel. And what we've heard from a lot of dads is, now I'm facing something that I have no idea what to do. And that we see a lot of dads who will bury themselves in work, or
Yeah.
that they just emotionally will detach and go, because I don't know how to fix it. And what we see is that when dads get empowered, I'll tell you, we did a thing years ago. I've got to find it. And it was something actually that your daughter, it was her idea, Nikki's idea, to do something. We called it Facing Fatherhood. And we sat down with 5 dads, and they ate really good food from the Bourbon Street Grill. And we made a bunch of questions, and we had them ask each other the questions. And it was just devastating to watch and to hear. And one of the dads in particular, who I always think of as dad, who always has it all figured out, And he talked about how early on he was like, I didn't know what to do. And as soon as he found that he could surf with his sons, that was just one thing that he could do with
Yeah.
his sons that he could still have. And that opened him up to all the possibilities. And I wouldn't think of surfing as being the thing, but for him, that was something that he always wanted. He wanted to surf with his boys. And he thought when they were diagnosed, he was like, well, that's not going to happen. But they worked towards and got to the point where they could go surfing. It may not have been exactly what he was picturing at first, but he now enjoys that passion with his kids. It was an entree in. So to find something, the first time that my husband ever, I didn't know what he was thinking. And I love Holly Robinson Pete says she was on Autism Avenue and that Rodney was over here somewhere else. And that she was like, dude, you better get over here on this street. But that she now looks back at it and goes, well, that wasn't kind. It wasn't loving. But it's how she felt. Right. And I didn't know what was going on with my husband. He seemed kind of like not to get it, like just sort of just oblivious. Mm-hmm. And I kicked into high gear. Like, we got to do things. We got to do things. And the moment that I saw him register it for the first time, and he welled up and was having all this emotion. And I said, what's going on right here? And he said, I just realized he may never know the joy of being in a play. And that's how he accessed the grief and I was like, that's what you're worried about? But of course, that's what my husband would worry about. I also want you to know that my son does plays, and my husband and my son just wrote a play that they performed a couple of weeks ago. So I want you to know the hope of that my husband also got to his dream. But finding that thing, as you were saying, Dr. Granpeesheh, that helps them to come into the circumstance, I think it's super important.